Let's bring in Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, thanks for taking the time. Today marks the second time now this special envoy, Witkoff, has visited Gaza this year. How important was this visit, and what kind of decision-making is the Trump administration faced with in this moment?
Good to be with you. It was a very significant visit indeed, because it comes, as your correspondent mentioned, at a time of rising international condemnation, criticism of Israel's policies in Gaza, claims that people are starving in Gaza. These claims, as noted by your correspondent, have been rejected by the Israeli government and by the Gaza Health Foundation, which claims it has brought 100 million meals into Gaza. It's an operation that's bigger than the Berlin airlift in the early 1960s. So you have two versions of events here. But let's assume that there is a food situation, shortage situation that can be acute in Gaza, certainly parts of Gaza. And I think this is what the special envoy Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee wanted to see firsthand. Now, the Israeli report saying that they came out very satisfied with the operations of the Gaza Health Foundation and are convinced that it's doing what it needs to do in order to relieve the food situation in Gaza, even in these very acute food situation pockets. I think the major takeaway from today actually is not about the food. It's about the negotiations. And here, yes, maybe there's some distance between the Israeli government and the American government on the issue of starvation, food in Gaza, but where they have come very close is on the objective of the negotiations. Now, over the course of really now almost 2 years, negotiations with Hamas have been over short-term ceasefires, 1 month, 2 months, and the release of a certain number of hostages, living hostages, not living hostages, and the release of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails. That has changed as of today. As of today, the Israeli and American position is no more limited ceasefires. They're going to go all out for a complete end of the war, the release of all the hostages, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, and the end of Hamas rule. And whatever that means, maybe the eviction of Hamas leaders from the Gaza Strip and taking away their weapons.
So the hunger crisis we've seen has now put a negative spotlight on Prime Minister Netanyahu, is shifting public sentiment away from Israel when you look at the international community reaction. And yes, there's more food going in now, a couple hundred trucks a day. That's nowhere close to the hundreds that were going in earlier in the conflict and what's needed at a time when the hunger crisis is worse than ever. What is stopping Netanyahu from opening the floodgates on letting food aid?
Let's be clear about this. Let's be clear about this. The accusation that Israel is starving the Palestinians of Gaza began on October 9th, 2023, when the UN accused us of starving the Palestinian population. And the starvation accusation has been with Israel since the beginning. But that is not to in any way diminish the situation today. And I'm not a spokesman for the Israeli government. I've been in favor of flooding the Gaza Strip with aid since the beginning of this conflict in 2023.
So why not flood it with aid right now? We know what the pictures are showing us in terms of the starvation that is happening there. We've talked to people with aid groups who are helping in this process of trying to get the food to these people. We've talked to doctors who are treating people with malnutrition, and people are dying because of malnutrition.
Well, let me give you what the response was when I said this, okay? It was very unpopular at the time. I want you to know. I'd go on Israeli television. I'd say we should be flooding Gaza with aid, and I'd be very criticized. It was among Israelis at the time, and to a large degree even today. We're at war with Gaza. Gaza was an independent state before 2023. And never in history has the United States certainly ever felt compelled to feed an enemy population. Didn't do it during World War II with the Japanese and the Germans. And that most of this aid was being stolen by Hamas. It was either used to feed Hamas terrorists, or Hamas was selling it back to the population at exorbitant prices and enriching itself through the process. So there were lots of compelling arguments against giving aid. My own argument was simply what is happening today, that if we did not flood the Gaza Strip with aid, that eventually situation where we would have acute food shortages, that international pressure on Israel would mount, and ultimately the IDF, our armed forces, would not have the space and time it needed to defeat Hamas, which is precisely what's happened. I don't relish the fact that I was right about this. I think the Israeli government understands this now and is doing actually much more to address the acute hunger, the food shortages in Gaza. I hope it's not too late. or too little too late. As Steve Witkoff came away, the special envoy, and Ambassador Huckabee came away convinced today, according to Israeli reports, that they believe that the Gaza Health Foundation is doing exactly what it should be doing in both providing aid to the Gaza population, but also denying Hamas the access to that food.
Ambassador Michael Oren, thank you very much for your time today and your perspective. Thanks.